Okay, here we go. I believe we are live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the COC's first ever virtual roundtable, which we're hosting tonight on YouTube. This is the first time we're doing this, so please bear with us. Technical difficulties might arise, but we'll do our best to fix them and come back to you if something happens. Last week, we extended an opportunity to our supporters to submit questions ahead of time for this event. And I want to say thank you to everybody who did. I'm always grateful to see so many people submitting questions because it really underlines how engaged you are with the company in this art form. And our patrons are really at the heart of this company. Without a public audience to participate in this art form, there is no opera. So again, thank you for asking excellent questions. We appreciate it and welcome it. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak directly to you tonight about all of them. At the end of the evening, I will also encourage you to continue sending your questions and thoughts to audiences@coc.ca to keep the conversation going. Before we start, I want to give you a general roadmap of what to expect from the roundtable tonight. In terms of structure, I'm going to begin by recapping our fall cancellation announcement, which we shared 2 weeks ago with you. Then I'm going to address the questions you have submitted so far. This is where I will spend most of our time. The questions you have submitted fall into 6 broad themes, and I will try to answer them as comprehensively as I can. Okay, let's start with the fall cancellation. 2 weeks ago, we made a difficult announcement, the fact that we would be canceling in-person performances and events during the fall portion of our 2020-21 season. As I mentioned in my message to all of you, we looked at every option for moving forward with performances this fall. But the reality is there is no way for us to rehearse, stage, and perform opera with physical distancing in place. How do you have an orchestra of between 50 and 100 instrumentalists in the pit? How do you have singers sharing the stage and singing in full voice? And even if we could figure out solutions to those issues, how do you perform for a full auditorium of 2,000 people? Because the key consideration for us is that we won't be able to cover our costs, not even close, if we are selling every third or fourth seat to maintain 6 feet between patrons. So given the outlook of the pandemic and the nature of our art form, we had to be realistic, and that meant putting a pause on our programming. The impact on our programming is huge. First of all, we won't be able to present Parsifal, which was the anchor of this monumental 2020-21 season. Given the years of community effort and planning it took to bring this work to our stage, I will admit that this is one that's especially disappointing on a personal level. However, there's much consolation in being able to confirm that we have been able to reschedule this production to open our 2022-23 season. We have been able to essentially transplant the production with almost the entire cast intact to the fall of 2022. And that's really a remarkable achievement, really, of my team. And I just want to thank them here for going through that effort so quickly and efficiently. I've heard from so many of you that you give credit and appreciation to this effort, and I couldn't agree with you more. I also like to think that the fact that we have waited decades to see a fully staged Parsifal means that another 2 years is, comparatively speaking, a short stretch. For those of you who contributed to our monumental campaign, specifically to make this production possible, the menu of benefits associated with your support will be fulfilled in the 2022-23 season. So much about Parsifal. The Marriage of Figaro will also not be taking place this fall, but this week we were happy to stream our 2016 presentation of this production through our From the Vault project. It is a small gesture of appreciation to you for supporting us during a very challenging time. In light of this cancellation, we have developed flexible ticketing options for our subscribers with impacted tickets to Parsifal and the Marriage of Figaro. You can either donate the value of your tickets to the company as a charitable donation and receive a tax receipt for it. That's the first option. The second option is, sorry, that's okay, this is live. We try to resume, and I hope that the dog will not get excited again. Yeah, you stop it. So the first option for returning your tickets, donate them back for a charitable receipt. The second option is you can convert your ticket into a gift certificate that never expires, basically a credit. Or the third option, you can have the full value of your tickets refunded. And you can do all of this online at coc.ca. It has been amazing how many of you have chosen to donate the value of your tickets back to the company. It really makes the difference in our ability to weather this storm. I want to say we truly appreciate, especially in the understanding that this pandemic has impacted all of us in so many ways. So thank you very much. In terms of other programming, the world premiere of our opera for young audiences, Phantasma, which was originally scheduled for November 2020, will be now rescheduled for a later date in the 2020-21 season. Phantasma is a fascinating project that has involved an extensive amount of community consultation with educators and artists on how to tell a contemporary story about courage, violence, and how to help or fail to help others. I know that Ian Cusson, our composer in residence, the librettist Colleen Murphy, as well as Julie McIsaac, our director, dramaturg in residence, have already put so much of themselves into this work. And we are looking forward to seeing it come to life next spring. This is also the first commissioned opera at COC to be composed by an Indigenous artist, Ian Cusson being a Métis and French-Canadian composer. Many of you might also know Ian Cusson from work that was commissioned by the COC in partnership with the National Arts Centre in Ottawa to write an aria to replace the opening act 3 of Harry Sommer's Louis Riel, specifically the so-called Chaos aria, and thereby redress an act of cultural appropriation by the original creators of the piece. Ian's aria, Dodon, Mon tout petit, had its world premiere in September 2019 in Ottawa and was performed as part of our 2020-21 season reveal in Toronto this past January. So there's a recognition and embrace in Ian's body of work of opera as a living, breathing art form, and we look forward to seeing his Phantasma as soon as we can. So that was a small aside. Let me return to the further impact of our fall cancellation. The annual Ensemble Studio competition and Center Stage Gala will not take place this fall. I should mention that we're still committed to recruiting and providing a platform for Canada's young opera singers, even in our COVID-19 reality. We don't know exactly what that looks like yet, but we are reworking the audition process and timelines to enable us to support emerging opera vocalists in the country. The free concert series in the Richard Bradshaw Amphitheatre will not have live performances scheduled while physical distancing is in effect. We are currently speaking to artists and institutional partners to explore how we can continue this programming in a digital format. All in-person education and outreach activities are also paused until further notice. There's a lot of planning to do on our part in figuring out exactly what our new digital fall will look like. And to help us do that, we are going to create a number of audience feedback opportunities in July. We're of course connecting with you today. Tomorrow, we will also be circulating a formal survey to you to get a feedback regarding your digital content habits and what you would like to see this fall. For me, that's a really important consideration. Everything we do as a company, should be sensitively attuned to our audience. And I look forward to hearing from you to help us shape our future digital program. Okay, so now that I've talked through our fall cancellation announcement, I want to get into the questions that you have submitted. There were lots of questions, which is really terrific, and thank you again for submitting them. To help answer as many as possible, I'd like to go through them in categories or themes. 6 major themes emerged from the questions, and I'm listing them below in no particular order. Theme 1 was financial health of the institution and staff compensation. The second theme is around equity and inclusion at the COC. Third theme has to do with the status of my contract and departure date for the Paris Opera, and the closely related topic of the ongoing search for the company's next general director. The fourth theme represents questions about online streaming of performances, whether this will continue, and what might it look like in the future. The fifth theme centers on our possible return to the Four Seasons Center for the Performing Arts, and what safety measures or changes to the building infrastructure we might institute to make that happen. Finally, the sixth theme involved a number of questions and interesting topics that didn't really fit into any of the previous categories. So everything from industry trends to specific questions around artistic vision. Okay, let's launch right in. The first theme is financial health of the institution and staff compensation. I'd first like to share some of the questions that came from you on this theme. Has the COC been able to maintain relative financial health in spite of cancellations? Is the COC eligible for federal assistance for salaries? Does the COC have any insurance against cancellations? Is the COC paying staff and artists? The first thing I want to say is that for the COC and the entire arts sector, this is a period of great revenue uncertainty. It's also a period of potentially huge revenue loss, both with respect to ticket revenue and contributed revenue. So that is the financial context that we're working in. And within this very insecure environment, we're trying to keep the administrative core of the company intact while honoring our commitments to artists. Financially, we have been able to leverage every available mechanism to keep us going. The company is eligible for the federal wage subsidy, and we are actively lobbying for that to be extended until at least the end of the year. As I mentioned before, quite a lot of you have returned the value of your ticket for a charitable donation, and that has been incredibly helpful. Additionally, a portion of the grant from the Canada Council for the Arts allocated for next season was released early to assist us with immediate crisis management. So those are mainly the things that keep us going at the moment. I think it's fair to say that the COC has been able to maintain relative financial health despite the cancellations and to continue paying our staff. But our environment is still highly volatile. So the range of current outcomes for us is pretty unpredictable. That's why continuing to connect with you through meaningful artistic programming is really important for us. To continue our relationship with you as members of the community, to recognize and offer benefits for your financial support. More broadly, it's important for us to advocate for continued and more aggressive government intervention. One of you asked, have performing arts organizations in Canada established themselves as an effective lobby group to seek government assistance to our very important cultural and employment organizations? Surely we aren't going to go it alone. No, we surely are not going it alone, and we probably couldn't. We're in the middle of a process to essentially do that, effectively lobbying together. There is an informal gathering of major Toronto arts institutions. We call ourselves the Group of 8, which is constituted of the AGO, the National Ballet, Harbourfront Centre, the ROM, Soul Pepper, TIFF, the TSO, and the COC. The leadership of these organizations is talking to each other on a weekly basis. As much as possible, we're coordinating our response to the moment in the most collaborative way. That includes advocacy with all three levels of public funders. Less than 2 weeks ago, I was one of the people who testified to the Standing Committee on Finance at the province of Ontario, that as a leader of this company, my focus is on keeping the administrative core of the COC intact, and that the financial ramifications for the art sector will be dire without continued intervention from the government. It's a lot easier to tear a company down than to build it up. And quicker too, I want to add. It takes a long time to build and very little time to break. We have built something here at the COC that's unique, and we've built it over many decades. And I want to do everything I can to prevent us from losing that. Because many of you have asked about whether we are compensating our artists, our backstage crews, and our staff. I want to be very clear on this. The COC has a number of different relationships as an employer. We have relationships with full-time permanent employees. This is the core of the administrative workforce. But we also have part-time contract employees, like our patron services team at the Four Seasons Center for Performing Arts. We're working with those staff members individually to figure out what works best for them in this situation in terms of continued security and compensation with the available tools at our disposal, including the wage subsidy. Additionally, we have a number of standing collectively bargained agreements with various North American unions, including Equity, our soloists, stage managers, and chorus members, TMA, the Toronto Musicians Association, which is the COC Orchestra, and IATSE, the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, our stage crew. So in each of those situations, the impact of COVID on our operations is different. We've offered indemnity payments to main stage artists who couldn't perform in the spring and in the fall. We're in touch with each of these unions to discuss the situation of their members and to ensure that there's clarity and adherence to the agreements that govern our relationship and work. And we're having these conversations with the goal of keeping the company as whole as possible in this present situation. I've also extended the opportunity for the members of those unions to reach out and schedule a conversation with me personally if they wish. So I've made myself available to our chorus, to our orchestra, to our stage crew, and so on, to have the highest possible transparency around this and to communicate clearly and openly about what is a challenging and changing situation. The second theme is around equity and inclusiveness at COC. This is obviously top of mind for many of us at the moment, as we have been following the Black Lives Matter protests in the United States, here at home and around the world. But of course, the issue has a deep and structural history, and we want to be cognizant of the scale of what's involved in transforming the various systems of access and opportunity that have been with us for decades. That being said, here are some of the questions that we've received on this topic. What are your plans to program and perform works by Black, Indigenous, and people of color composers? Will you be premiering any Canadian works? The short answer is yes. As I mentioned at the outset of this roundtable, our upcoming world premiere Phantasma is composed by Ian Cusson, who is a Métis and French-Canadian composer. Ian is also embedded in the organization as the composer in residence at our COC Academy. So Ian's voice is helping us transform this organization's makeup into alter the lens by which we look at any number of operational issues. We have done quite a bit of foundational work, I would say, in setting the stage for an ongoing evolution of the company by creating a circle of artists, an advisory body composed of Indigenous artists that has, since 2018, been speaking directly to decision makers to shape commitments that will support Indigenous communities with relationships based on reciprocity, caring, and mutual respect. I also want to say that as my contract with the COC will come to an end relatively soon, and more on that in a moment, many of these programming choices and how they will be brought to fruition will ultimately sit with my successor, but that the organization is very much committed to this in the long term. But I think what's promising is that there is a recognition both at the COC and more broadly in our sector that this is a question of systemic and interwoven patterns in our society. Last month, I issued a statement of solidarity and responsibility in response to Black Lives Matter demonstrations. I know that probably not everyone has had a chance to read it, so in this forum, I wanted to reiterate something that I highlighted in the piece. Something which grew out of lots of conversations I had, which I think is critical to this process. When it comes to equity and inclusiveness, the actions that we need to define or commit to cannot be just a matter of tokenistic box checking. We need to radically transform representation, and that means asking who is empowered with opportunities to develop their talent, who is afforded a voice at the table, and who decides what the COC programs on the main stage and beyond. Again, this is about representation at all levels of the company, which is about larger systems of access and opportunity. The systems that have led to underrepresentation have been built and maintained for generations, and it will take an ongoing, sustained effort to dismantle them, to create a more inclusive ecosystem that furthers opera relevance in the 21st century. We do have an opportunity now, especially as a company, to accelerate the amplification of Black, Indigenous people and people of color artists for our digital programming and partnerships. And that is certainly one of the defining values we are bringing to our digital programming in the fall. Of course, there is much more to do, and I'm committed to being accountable for that, to learning and improving what we do every day, not only in what we say with our art, but how we say it through our relationships and ongoing dialogue. And this is really only where this conversation starts. I think it's something that we want to and are committed to continue. The third theme is the status of the contract and departure date for the Paris Opera, as well as the closely related topic of the search for a new general director of the COC. Here are some of the questions that came from you. Given the worldwide disruption caused by the pandemic, are you definitely going to leave for Paris on schedule, or has that been changed? It would be good to know if the search for a new director here is continuing. Given the situation at Paris Opera, is it still possible that Alexander will leave earlier than originally planned? First of all, I want to reiterate that the recent news from Paris that my predecessor, Stefan Lissner, will be leaving 6 months earlier than expected was a bit of a surprise. I wasn't given much advance notice, not more than a couple of days. And that certainly wasn't enough to figure out what it means and how it could be addressed on my end. So I've really had no plans whatsoever to leave early. And what I told them in response is what I'll tell you right now. I currently have a contract with the COC until the end of June next year, 2021. My focus is on the COC and how we navigate this pandemic. And it's hard to contemplate, making an earlier departure possible unless we have some transitional leadership in place and clarity on what's going on with my succession. Regarding the succession planning process, these are not truly my updates to make. It's a project of our board of directors. The process is happening, it's ongoing. For my part, certainly as soon as there is any additional clarity around the situation surrounding Paris, you will be the first ones to know. And in the end, this is also, I want to reiterate, not only a professional decision, obviously, it's a decision that involves my family and a lot of other aspects that I don't take lightly at all. Okay, on to the fourth theme. Questions about online streaming. And I'll start off once again with reading out some of the questions that you submitted on the topic. I like very much being able to access online some of the past performances of COC Opera. Will this continue? Would it not be possible to put on the productions without an audience, stream them live and on demand, and charge a lower ticket price? The short answer is we're exploring all of these options right now. As I mentioned at the top of this roundtable, we are going to be sending an in-depth survey to you tomorrow and encourage you to participate, because this will give us important information on what kind of programming you're actually interested in engaging with digitally. Throughout July and August, we will continue speaking with artists and our internal leadership team on how to produce programming for a digital fall. In this regard, something that I think is really important is that we work together to create art for this moment and conceive programming for the conditions of digital media itself. So rather than more iPhone videos of a performance from somebody's kitchen, as charming as that was at the beginning of the pandemic, we look at something that's more produced, more polished. And in terms of using our space at the Opera House with a small contingent of performers and video crew that can create and capture safely, we are looking into that absolutely. Obviously, we will not be able to do a production of a full-scale opera, because you can't safely socially distance an orchestra of 50, 60, 80 musicians in the pit, for example. But we're going to put a programming plan in place that will hopefully allow us to continue to be nimble in this environment and to deliver something that responds to our audience, that surprises you and delights you as well, and that showcases what opera can be and can mean to us today. Of course, another driving consideration, as I mentioned earlier, will be amplifying Black, Indigenous, and people of color artists and groups, and creating opportunities for access to our space if it's safe and possible to do so. For us, there are an immense number of practical considerations to work through, like sanitary protocol, like how are we going to bring people in if you need lights installed, for example. How are you going to install those safely? And this brings me to our next category of questions. The fifth theme is about how we return to the Four Seasons Center for the Performing Arts. Here are some representative questions that you've submitted. Is there any possibility of performances with physical distancing in the audience, or is that revenue loss too great? With the revamped program, will there be changes in the seating plans as well? Will there be a distance seating policy? This is the reason why I have not renewed the ticket subscription yet, until I receive more update info in a new renewal package. With regards to COVID-19 safety measures, is COC considering new air filtration systems, removal of chairs, etc., to keep its audience safe? Most importantly, when we talk about main stage opera right now, there is just no feasible way to ensure physical distancing and adherence to public health guidelines with respect to a communicable virus like COVID-19 and the artistic side of operations. The orchestra pit, as I mentioned, is a huge issue. Performers on the stage singing in full voice, that's a huge issue. So while we could block off seats and ask you to wear a mask in the auditorium, reduce the capacity, we would still run up against the question of how we guarantee the safety of our singers, our instrumentalists, our backstage crew, and so on. Of course, if we solve those issues, I touched on this earlier, but the economic reality of our business model is we need ticket revenue to cover the costs of performances. So a big piece for us to prioritize and to understand really clearly is if we're reopening the house for performances, are we able to keep everyone safe, public and artists and crew, while securing enough ticket revenue to cover the costs of the performance? I will also say in regard to the question about the air filtration systems and other aspects of building infrastructure, the COC is very, very lucky and has a remarkable advantage in this current crisis that the Opera House is a modern and relatively new building. It's really a state-of-the-art facility, not only for art, but also in terms of how we can keep our audience safer than other buildings might be. And the refurbishments that might be required to improve the situation in a pandemic environment, we hope will be rather minimal for us. So that covers off the questions around our return to the Four Seasons Center. Finally, the sixth theme, just got us some of your miscellaneous questions that I just thought would be interesting for more of you to hear answers to. For example, one of you wrote, I can't imagine what it took to cancel the spring and fall seasons. Could you describe some of the issues involved in canceling and rescheduling, especially Parsifal? Well, as it goes sometimes with art, it has to do with a lot of practical matters. As you know, Parsifal is a co-production with the Met. The set is sitting in a warehouse in New Jersey, and with the border closed. For once, we had no clear insight in when we could get the set and bring it to Canada. There's other practical issues like singers from other countries being able to enter Canada to rehearse. It was quite a monumental effort, I want to say, to first of all assess the feasibility of a fall production, and then once we had decided that that wouldn't be possible, the team really pulled all its strengths together to make sure that we could secure the production's availability for the fall of 22, check all the artists, also look at the whole 22-23 season to make sure that a huge project like Parsifal will work within the context of all of that season. So again, kudos to the whole team for pulling that off. I also want to say, because a lot of you have been thinking about it, I'm sure that we're lucky that the COC season is divided into 3 distinctly separate parts: fall, winter, and spring. So we deliberately only looked at this fall for now. We're planning to go ahead with the winter and the spring, and we will take our time to assess that as we get closer. Another question: would you consider doing additional virtual choir community projects? This was really a great experience and much appreciated. It gives a real appreciation of opera. Yeah, we were kind of surprised how hugely successful this initiative was. So yeah, we would absolutely look into doing that again. As I mentioned, we're planning for a 2021 digital fall season, which will incorporate our learnings from the spring and summer programming. And we will continue to iterate opportunities for our community to participate in opera in a way that engages and delights you. Another question: after the worst of COVID-19 has passed, will there be some permanent changes in the way opera is presented by opera companies and experienced by its patrons? I mean, that's really a question that I can only assume is on everybody's mind at the moment. I mean, first of all, we all hope it will end quickly. I think things will be different after, on both sides, on stage and in the audience. We will all be much more preoccupied by safety, keeping everybody healthy. I assume we will see masks in the auditorium for a very long time. We will definitely want to know more about the safety and health of our artists as they come to rehearsals every day. We will want to encourage everybody to really watch out for themselves in order not to put their colleagues in danger. And there will be different protocols, I'm sure, for how we run our rehearsals, how we run our performances. However, I think as it goes with the magic of the theater, we're going to try and do all of this so that you can have an experience that's not bothered by any of those considerations. Another question: As you look around the world, are certain opera companies faring worse than others in adapting to the new pandemic realities? When the opera historians look back at this time, which approaches will they praise and which ones will they pan? Another great question. I mean, I wish I had a crystal ball and could look into the future and see what we've done right and where we could have done better. I think reactivity, constantly observing the environment right now, also learning from other countries, other companies that have opened up already, that are trying to open up. That's going to be really, really important for a long time. It is true that some of the European companies are encouraged to open up very quickly now. You will see that in the news. Those are companies that very often are very heavily supported by governments, so they don't have to worry a lot about lost ticket revenue. That certainly creates space for art. But I do think that eventually it's really it's important for us to focus on coming back and to put on the shows that you love about the COC and to figure out ways how to do that in our specific environment. And we're in many ways lucky that we own our venue and can make a lot of those decisions ourselves. We don't have to rely on a landlord to impose conditions on us. Okay, the last question. Imagine the 2021-22 season, which is the season after next. What will the COC and other successful opera companies be offering on their stages or online? I mean, I would say we've probably spoken about this all evening already. It's probably going to be a new mix. I think we've all pushed more into digital content that we thought we would be on a very short timeline since the month of March. I think it's also important for me that we maintain the specificity of the life experience in the hall, which still to me, especially in a hall like the Four Seasons, what the voice, an unamplified voice can do in that space, that's a thrill I wouldn't want to lose. Again, being prudent about it, being careful, not putting anyone in danger. That's going to be really important. Hopefully we will have made a lot of progress by 21-22 with the sanitary situation, with the vaccine, with medication. Even just increased testing, I think, will help us a lot restore the confidence of not only our patrons, but our staff and our artists. So there's certainly lots to do, and working through this right now as we look at the 2021-22 season, which has yet to be announced. And I hope once we get to announcing it, that you will be happy with what you see. Well, with that, I'm coming to the end of this town hall. I want to thank you for your time and for your questions. I really can't stress this enough, but you are the heart of this company. We're so grateful that you've continued to invest in our work and to support our journey through these uncharted waters. I know we'll be back stronger than ever, and that's thanks to you. So once again, thank you so much for being part of the COC community, the COC family. In that spirit, we as a company continue communicating with you and keeping you updated on our plans as they come into sharper focus. And I also encourage you to continue sending your questions, your feedback, and your thoughts to audiences@coc.ca. Again, audiences@coc.ca to keep this conversation going. Finally, before we log off, I want to remind you that later this week, on Thursday, July 9, at 7:30 p.m., we'll be streaming Songs of Hope, From Our Homes to Yours, an online concert featuring artists of the COC Ensemble Studio. The program includes musical selections that our young artists have personally selected, and it's a beautiful and eclectic digital take on the at-home salon, an intimate concept that's perfect for our times. And it features Liz Upchurch and Johannes Debus as well. You can watch for free online at coc.ca/songs of hope. I hope you'll join me in experiencing this one-of-a-kind concert. Thank you, and bye for now. I hope we will be able to meet again in person very, very soon. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.